to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
We have been informed on CRN Live on YouTube, got a slight sound problem. We should have that fixed. We're real quick. Producer John working on it right now. So just to let you know if you are planning on rolling on over there. In the meantime, let's go ahead and get you updated and kind of familiar with what happened last week. You may have watched it, but again, we just want to make sure you're updated and ready to go for this weekend. Saturday's racing actually started overseas in Saudi Arabia. Formula E was at the Jeddah circuit in Saudi Arabia there. The rookie Taylor Barnard continues to impress. He claimed the pole. He couldn't hold on to it, though. The veteran Oliver Rowland strategically used that power boost to get by and then stay ahead of Barnard. He rolled on to the win. That's his second win of the season so far, and we're only 4 races in. Barnard, though, was able to hold off a late race charge, got second over Jake Hughes. Watch this kid. 4th through 10th, Jake Dennis, Nick Cassidy, Stoffel Van Dorn, Jean-Eric Verne, Pascal Verline, Dan Ticktum, Eduardo Martara rounding it out. With the 2 wins, Oliver Rowland is your points leader. 68 points to Barnard's 51. Again, this kid's a rookie, but he's certainly not acting like it.
Nope.
Got a good head on his shoulders.
Yep.
39 for Antonio Felix DaCosta. Max Gunther has 37, 27 for Jake Hughes. Nissan takes control of the team standings. They've got 68 to 67 for the NOEM McLaren team. Tag Heuer Porsche's got 64. DS Penske has 63, so a tight 4-way battle for first. Then you got the second tier. Maserati has 43, 41 for Mahindra. Jaguar 35. We'll include Andretti in there. They've got 27. Then you got to drop all the way down to Envision and Cooper Kiro tied at 6, and Lola Yamaha remains scoreless, the only team remaining this season without a point. Nissan leads the manufacturer standings, by a pretty hefty 130 to 83 point advantage over Stellantis. 80 for Porsche. Jaguar has 58, 52 Mahindra. Lola has 1. Youch. All right. Now, we'll say this because we do this from time to time. We'll come across where 2 of the series that we cover on a regular basis will have their green flags drop at about, give or take, the same time. When we do the results, we tend to report it as who's going to finish first.
Get some water for this.
Yeah. And as we noted last week, we don't generally talk a whole lot about the ARCA Menard series, but they've been making enough news for us to kind of fly their flag for them a little bit here. So starting about the same time that Formula E did last Saturday was the ARCA Menard series season opener, and well, after the Demolition Derby was all said and done, the last man standing was North Carolina-based late model specialist Brendan Butterbean Queen. He was able to keep veteran William Sawalich at bay over the final couple of laps, claimed the win. Queen said in interviews afterward, quote, or that once the team packed up and they were ready to roll back to North Carolina, he simply grabbed the trophy. He and the team went to Waffle House to celebrate. Now, this is interesting because the race was sponsored by Chili's.
It's a Waffle House and chocolate milk.
Uh-huh. He said the team was going to celebrate again during the week at Chili's. We don't know whether that actually happened or not, but we hope it did.
But I have got to say this. ARCA has got to reevaluate how they go through their testing protocols and how they clear people to run at their largest race of the year on super speedways, because there are no reasons and no valid excuses whatsoever to where 40 cars, the largest field of the year in ARCA and the largest field that has been in probably at least 6 years that I can recall.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't remember the last time we talked about, how many entries? 40?
There were 50 on the entry list.
Yeah.
10 cars went home.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember the last time we talked about 40 cars starting an ARCA series race.
Well,
I'm happy to see it, but unfortunately, they didn't follow through on the promise. Like we noted, it was a demolition derby.
It's good because when at the halfway break, 21 of the 40 cars are only left standing, that is
ridiculous.
Borderline comical.
That's ridiculous. I mean, at that point in time, you're looking at what we used to see as the Busch Clash at Daytona, when it was limited down because they would only allow those who got a pole position the previous year to start. Correct. So you were limited to like 20 or so cars.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like.
Maybe 12 or 14 in some cases.
That's true. Yeah. Wow.
But it's inexcusable that 13 cars finished the race. out of
Yeah.
40.
I mean, we get it. We kind of equated this to the whole Major League Baseball situation, to where if the majors are the Cup Series, AAA is Xfinity, AA is the trucks, single A would be ARCA. We get it that these guys are not necessarily the most experienced on the planet, but for the love.
But on that scale you just used, Daytona Cup was AAA, Xfinity was AA, Trucks was single A.
These guys were in high school.
ARCA was Little League. Sorry, ARCA drove like a little. Look, you're watching a Little League baseball game, which is sad, but it's pathetic.
Yeah, it's yeah. We'll just put it that way.
When you get a four-time Indy 500 winner that's making a stock car debut, that gets pile driven after the checkered flag by another car because they didn't get the checkered flag call from their spotter. Come on now.
Isn't that something that, I mean, I get it. The spotter needs to be aware, especially at a Daytona or a Talladega.
When your respective car crosses the line and you can see the starter with the rag in the air and you get the call from your headset, checkers is out, because you're the one that's got the tower in your ear.
Yeah.
No excuse.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's some on the spotter, because the spotter, again, needs to be aware, especially at a Daytona or Talladega or even Atlanta.
That's all on spotter. But
as a driver, aren't you supposed to be somewhat aware of what's happening in the flag stand each time you go by the start-finish line?
It can be hard to pick up if you don't take that split second go, Lance. CRN Live, you make us see my eyes here. If I'm looking at the track right here, glance. You have a fraction of a second. But that fraction of a second, you've got to time it to where you have a fraction of a visual. There's a white. There's the green.
Yeah.
Yellow caution, you know is going to be out because you won't have the lights flashing on the track.
Yeah. I mean,
that's no excuse.
And the only reason I say that is because we have heard of, and certainly we've heard it much more at the Cup Series level than probably just about any other level, but we're talking about drivers who have been behind the wheel of a race car in some way, shape, or form, probably for many years.
Yeah.
And we have heard on the radio where this driver or that driver will say, just out of random in the middle of a race, hey, did you see that girl over there in that, and they'll even be able to lock down hey, section 103, did you see that girl in the grandstands? And it suddenly causes the crew to grab binoculars and start looking for the girl in section 103 in the grandstands.
Yeah.
So, again, I bring up the question, how much of the responsibility is actually on the driver to recognize that the checkered flag is in the air and, back off the accelerator?
Majority of it's on him, but dang near all of it is on the spotter.
Yeah. I mean, I will be more than happy to overwhelmingly put it on the spotter, but I think there needs to be some on the driver, too.
I could have drove a better race with a bum right foot than what some of them done.
Well, we'll work on that. The Xfinity Series took to Daytona. They began their 2025 season. Wasn't the crash fest that the ARCA race was, but there was a big crash as the field took the white flag for the last lap. Driver out front when the yellow was shown to the field was Richard Childress Racing's Jesse Love. This is the fourth year in a row that Richard Childress Racing has won the season opener. Congratulations to them.
That eliminated my bold prediction for the year. Xfinity, off the bat.
Yes, it did. With the win, they now got two. He has 2 Xfinity Series wins, having to survive 3 restarts at the end to get it. Love wins. Sam Mayer second. Not a bad debut for the Haas factory team now, because they placed second and third. Sheldon Creed was in that position. Carson Quapple was 4th. Taylor Gray 5th. Then Harrison Burton, Jordan Anderson, Dean Thompson, Jeremy Clements, and Patrick Emmerling filled out the top 10. Points-wise, yes, Love leads, but only because he won. Points-wise, he's actually not the leader. Sheldon Creed is technically your points leader, but he sits second because, Love's got the win. Then you got Dean Thompson, Taylor Gray, Sam Mayer, Carson Quapple, Jeb, then Harrison Burton, Jordan Anderson, Justin Allgaier, Jeremy Clements, Patrick Emmerling. They are your playoff contenders after only one race. Again, only Love is locked in with the win, and, expect a whole lot of changes before very much longer.
Probably a lot will come today.
After this weekend, yeah. Sunday got going a little bit earlier. We talked about the schedule change last Saturday on our shortened show. Yes, I had conversations with our flagship station about that. And after President Donald Trump and his limo, the Beast, led the field for a couple of pace laps, the race went green for 9 laps before being stopped because of rain. They tried to get rolling, and after several laps under caution, parked the cars again. So a race that technically started about 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time-ish wasn't going to finish until well after dark, almost 10 p.m. Eastern Time to be exact. We'll get to television ratings in a minute because I found them interesting. We talked about them on Cross Flags, but unfortunately, John's been having problems with getting that posted, so we understand if you haven't seen it. Came down to a last lap crash, and who was going to be able to get through it? NASCAR, to their credit, did not throw the yellow prematurely, and the field was able to make it through the crash on the backs. That was on the backstretch, the race to the line. It was William Byron at the end who was holding the Harley J. Earl Trophy for the second year in a row and is only the 5th driver to claim back-to-back Daytona 500s at Daytona International Speedway. Congratulations to him. Just ahead of Tyler Reddick. Crash happened when Cole Custer got into Denny Hamlin, turned him. Byron, the first since Hamlin, turned the trick in 2019 and 2020 to go back-to-back. All right, Byron wins, Reddick second. Jimmy Johnson, in his part-time effort, came home third, trailed by the pole sitter, Chase Briscoe. Yeah, we'll get back to that. John Hunter Nemechek, Alex Bowman, Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, Justin Allgaier gets the Junior Motorsports ride in its first Cup Series race, a top 10 ninth, and Chris Buescher comes home 10th. Byron is all but locked into the playoffs with the win. I say all but because my prediction is that once we get to race number 26, we'll have more than 16 winners, which means somebody ain't going that's got to win. We'll find out whether or not that prediction holds true or not. But Byron is right now locked in. Then you got Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, Tyler Reddick, Alex Bowman, Chris Buescher, Eric Jones, Jimmy Johnson, John Hunter Nemechek. It was Chase Briscoe. It ain't no more. Chase Elliott, Ty Dillon, Daniel Suarez, Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Ty Gibbs. They were the early top 16. Everybody else moved up one. I have to admit I didn't even look to see who moved up into the top 16 with a penalty. And there's actually a fairly good reason for it because that whole thing's under appeal. Again, we'll get to it in a moment. This weekend from Daytona, Atlanta. Matt and I are going to be heading over there after we get done with this show. Starts with the Craftsman Truck Series and the Freight 208, Fox Sports 1, MRN Radio. Sort of. We'll fill you in on that in a bit. Begins 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Central Time. Later today, Xfinity Series gets it rolling. The Bennett Transportation and Logistics 250 at Atlanta. That'll be on the CW and PRN radio. Starts 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time. And then we turn our attention to Sunday. Cup Series has it all to themselves as they get into the Ambetter Health 400 at Atlanta. That'll be Fox and PRN radio. Starts 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. Formula E is done until April. They tried to fill that gap, but they whiffed. They're the only other series that we cover regularly that's racing right now. So, yeah, be prepared. All right, I'm going to cover this before we go to first break here because I did find this interesting. We don't talk a lot about what's going on in Congress a whole lot because what Congress does doesn't necessarily affect what we talk about here on a regular basis, but this one actually does. A bill's coming before Congress soon that is entitled the Defense Act. Defense stands for, and a lot of people work up these acronyms over time. Government loves acronyms, let's face it. Defense standing for Disabling Enemy Flight, Entry, and Neutralizing Suspect Equipment. What the heck is that, you ask? Glad we're here to tell you. According to the wording of this overly wordy government document, it would give state and local law enforcement agencies the ability to disable drones during sporting events. Now, why is that important? That's what we're here to tell you. This is a bipartisan bill. It's sponsored by Republican Tom Cotton of Arkansas and Nevada Democrat Jackie Rosen. It's being supported by the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NCAA, and NASCAR, among others. Cotton is claiming that the bill would give the, quote, needed tools for state and local law enforcement to be able to protect the citizens. Cotton adds, quote, local law enforcement already protects the perimeter of these events. We already expect them to, say, stop a dump truck that would cause harm, so we need to give them the tools to be able to protect the airspace from weapons and biological threats, unquote. The reason this is significant is because right now, currently, law states that only federal law enforcement is allowed to disable unauthorized drones. And that is actually limited somewhat to some of the more highly visible outdoor sporting events. Think big events like Boston Marathon, Rose Bowl, World Series, Super Bowl, even if it's not held outdoor, or even if it's not held in a dome. NBA, NHL finals, again, these are big arenas that maybe a chemical or biological weapon doesn't happen, but let's face it, we do know that drones can be weaponized with something that's a little more than biological chemical. Nearly all regular season events in football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and racing, let's face it, 99% outdoors, they don't have an official on site that have legal authority to take down an unauthorized drone. I mean, if it's just a random baseball game, say in May, how many federal officials are actually there? Probably none, and a rather minimum of state and local authorities, but at least they have the ability to do this. Major League Baseball Senior VP of Security said of this bill, quote, if it's enacted, this legislation would dramatically increase the security of our stadiums and the safety of 70 million fans who attend our games annually. Think about how many different teams there are throughout the course of the season. Again, this bill would cover any sporting event that incurs a temporary flight restriction. This includes stadiums, ballparks, racetracks that hold at least 30,000 people, or any outdoor gathering numbering 100,000 or more. This would include all the stick and ball sports that we noted, plus NASCAR, Indycar, Formula One, the NHRA, well, and more. I mean, Formula E's coming to town in April. That's when they're going to be in Miami. So, this would cover all of that. So that's why we mention it here. No, it's not passed. It is set to come before Congress here fairly soon. I'd be relatively surprised if it didn't go, considering it's been co-sponsored by a Republican on one side and a Democrat on the other. I'm not sure how many people would really have a problem with this. So we'll see. We'll keep you updated on it. All right. If you watched the Daytona 500, you know that Ryan Preece ended up on his roof. Again. We'll talk about the fallout of it, because there was plenty of it when we come back here on CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Thank you very much for joining us here this morning, whether you're on the flagship station here in East Central Alabama or checking us out on CRN Live on YouTube. I love some of the conversation that we get back and forth here, and we got one guy who was talking about how Speed Tour is out there, and I had to ask you about Speed Tour. And for those of you who are involved in the chat there, what is Speed Tour? We'll go ahead.
From what I see about it, it's a super modified series on the West Coast.
Okay. And hey, we're far from the only ones that are on the air talking about racing right now. We know that. We know that you have choices. We appreciate the fact that you chose us. Thank you very much. With 5 laps to go last Sunday evening, got a major wreck that happened, brought out a red flag. The crash, unfortunately, again involved Ryan Preece. Preece, again, finding himself on his roof. This follows that crash that happened in 2023 in the summer race at Daytona where he flipped over. I'm just going to say multiple times. NASCAR says one thing, Matt and I say another. We'll just say multiple times, okay?
Right.
It all started out in front of him last Sunday night when Christopher Bell got turned on the bumper of Cole Custer. That turned Bell into the outside wall. Preece had nowhere to go. Preece hit the front left corner of Bell's ride, launched the nose of his own number 60 up into the air. He flipped over, landed on its roof, and slid down the banking and then back down onto its wheels when he went from the banking onto the apron of the track as it began going into turn 3. This needs to be heeded by NASCAR. Something's got to be done. And we've talked about this really since this car debuted. You and I have looked at this car. Yeah. We like the overall look of the car. We think that the car at least is starting to look a little bit more like its road-going brothers and sisters, even though Chevrolet doesn't have a Camaro anymore. We could get back into that, but we're not going to. But the problem is that the bottom side of it looks like the Matchbox cars that we played with as kids. And that, I think, is a problem, and that led Preece to say of this, quote, I don't know if it's the diffuser or what it is that makes these cars like a sheet of plywood when you walk out on a windy day. But when the car took off like that and it got real quiet, all I thought about was my daughter. I'm lucky to walk away, but we're getting really close to somebody not being able to. It's frustrating when you end your day like this, and he would later say that NASCAR needs to do something about the cars flipping over, said that he feels that somebody is going to lose their life if they don't. It's not just somebody might not walk away. I mean, that could be a serious injury. He's talking about something that we haven't seen since February 18th of 2001, and that's a death.
Lecture point number 1, class. Lecture point number 1. Ever since this kit car, it's basically what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
This kit car has hit the asphalt of a racetrack. There have been more flips with this car alone than I could recall with Gen 6 or Gen 5 put together.
I would agree with that.
It's not needed. And John Probst, Eric Jacuzzi, and all the other ones that are in the development side of the car and the technical side of the car, stop turning a blind eye. Stop turning a blind eye to what the people the gentlemen that are sitting behind the 5-point harnesses and driving these things are trying to say. Stop turning a blind eye to what these crew chiefs and car chiefs and engineers are trying to say, because this is ridiculous. Preece is dead on the money. Mm-hmm. You should not have a race car that is 3,600 pounds. When it gets the least little bit sideways, it turns into a sheet of plywood. That is unacceptable.
Yeah.
I have never seen a motorsports vehicle, let's word it that way, of any kind, take off and look like a 737 pivoting out of a runway at V1 vector to take off.
Let me bring another aspect to this, because I was searching for something on streaming yesterday specific, and I couldn't find it until I went to YouTube, and I happened to do a search there. But while I was searching for this, I knew it had aired on ESPN, so I went on to ESPN Plus, and I came across something that was done 3 years ago now, because it included that 2021 wreck that involved Ryan Newman at the Daytona 500. Remember that one?
Yep.
So it included that. So it was done after that. So it might have been done late in 2021 or early 2022. I'm not sure which. Mm-hmm. But it was a great E60 news magazine thing where Ryan McGee was hosting it, and he was talking to people like Dale Earnhardt Jr. and even Ryan Newman. But it talked about the death of Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah.
And if you think about what led up to February 18th of 2001, think about the year 2000 alone. We lost 3 drivers: Tony Roper, Kenny Irwin Jr., and obviously Adam Petty. NASCAR did nothing. NASCAR said safety is our highest priority. They did nothing. It took the death of Dale Earnhardt to make them go, we need to do something. And yes, the cars have been safer. No, we haven't had a death at the top levels of NASCAR since February 18th of 2001.
You got to back up and look at it this way, too.
But at the same time, that's not to say that there isn't something that can be done better than what we have now.
Well, true. Yeah, absolutely. But it does not take a astrophysicist, let's call it that, better known as a rocket scientist,
Sure.
to figure out that with these cars sealed off on the bottom, what's going to happen? Air's going to catch it easier and force it and launch it up. When you got the car with an unsealed bottom, and it's got a way on the side side skirt area to catch it and try to pin it back down. You got to look at it, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You got that air flap, you got that little appendage coming down. It can catch it and force it back down.
Yeah.
Okay. Unseal the bottom of the cars, and I guarantee you, it'll get better on super speed. It'll get better on super speedways, and it will get better on short tracks.
And it would also solve a lot of the problems of these cars spinning out and losing their tires and not being able to get back rolling to get back to pit road to get them changed and needing a tow. Kyle Busch.
It's in a sense of it, there needs to be individuals. I don't care if it's male, female, or whatever nationality, right, whatever it may be. I don't care if it's male or female. Fall into one. There needs to be people that know what they're doing instead of looking at, oh, well, this data on this computer says this, or this data says that. Sometimes data doesn't match up to real life when it comes to this.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
There needs to be individuals that know what they're doing in the upper levels of this sport to make it better, because it's becoming glaringly obvious in more ways than one. And there's going to be point number 2 coming up here very soon that I'm going to have a field day with.
Mm-hmm. We'll let him rest for a moment. Yeah, we're going to let him rest for a moment as we talk about some other things. As we noted in the race recap, Junior Motorsports' debut in the Cup Series resulted in a top 10 finish. Justin Allgaier finishing 9th. Led to the obvious question, though, of what might the future plans of Junior Motorsports be when it comes to the Cup Series. This week, Junior said this, quote, "I think we hit it out of the park in terms of our activation with Traveler Whiskey. I think Junior Motorsports did what they always do, and that's engagement and marketing better than anybody in the sport, or as good as anybody. So we'll see if it's exciting for them and if they want to continue doing this or do it again sometime this year. Maybe somebody calls us on Monday and has some other ideas, but we're always ready. We have been for years, so we'll see." He mentioned the marketing aspect of this, and you and I have been going to races for a long time. When was the last time you heard of the merchandise truck going back empty?
It's rare.
Guess what happened to the Traveler Whiskey merchandise truck last week? They went home empty. Every last item sold.
And the only thing you can say to that is good for them.
Congratulations. I think it's fantastic.
Good for them.
Junior continued, quote, "I want to be here," talking about the Cup Series. Kelly, I think, wants to be here, and I think we can be successful here. I think with the new charter model, it's a little more economical to be here, and so I feel like with our ability to draw interest in terms of sponsorship and support, it's an economical model for us with the new charter agreement.
Because they're guaranteeing them money.
There you go. And I feel like that the charters will continue to increase in value. So if there's somebody that watches what we're doing here that's not involved in the sport but would invest, we would be a good partner to consider because we know we have a good business model in the Xfinity Series. We know that we have the ability to bring sponsor interest to our teams to be able to help fund our operation.
Gee, I wonder why.
No kidding. Dale Jr.'s name is gold just like Michael Jordan's is. But then he cautioned fans before they get too excited. He said this, quote, "But I think the overall hurdle is the initial investment in a charter. I can put some money in, but I will not. Even if I had it, I would not buy the entire thing myself. I would certainly want to be an investor in any charter that we would be involved in. The charters, though, I think are at the value now where you almost have to have partners to get in if you're somebody like myself. But we'll see." I told Kelly that this could create some new conversations with some people that we haven't had conversations with yet. We've been on the phone and at the table with other people that were interested in investing in charters that did not work out. But we could have some brand new conversations. So we'll just have to wait and see if it's meant to be, it will happen.
Sure.
And he's right. Again, we're talking about what Stewart Haas Racing sold 3 charters at somewhere around the $20 to $25 million mark. And that's a bargain compared to what we heard Spire Motorsports bought that charter for, which was a reported $40 million. So this is an expensive venture, no doubt about it. And Dale's got a family to consider. And if those 2 girls want to go off to college, for example,
I don't think he'll have a problem with that. But I'll say this. After the popularity of the weekend and how it went and how good things went, I will not the least little fraction of a bit be surprised if his investor partner that comes into it is Chris Stapleton.
I could see that.
I will not be least little bit surprised because the popularity level of how Chris Stapleton is in the music industry right now and how he's got this whiskey brand and it's booming right now.
Yeah.
And he's buddies with Rick Hendrick. Pretty sure he's got a real good directional path on how to go about it.
Let's talk about that for just a second here real quick too, because again, we're starting to get to that point where we're getting a whole lot of charters that are changing hands, but at some point in time that's got to slow down, right? Sometime back on the show we talked about how the Cup Series teams, the owners specifically, were kind of getting up there in age, and with Tony Stewart removing himself from the owner ranks, being replaced by the likes of Justin Marks, Matt Cowlick, average age not necessarily changing much, but they're still aging. So what's the plan? You mentioned Rick Hendrick. Hendrick himself is 75 years old. Things look to be in good hands, though, because let's face it, he's got VP Jeff Gordon there. Yeah. You got Marks in there. Marks is a pretty young guy. He's what, in his 40s?
I think Justin is a little bit older than me by a couple.
Okay. And then you got Matt Cowlick, who's, I think, about my age, maybe a little younger. Again, Hendrick has set everything in motion. There's the guy who led HMS to 83 Cup wins and 7 Cup Series titles. That's Jimmy Johnson. He's in his mid to late 40s. Johnson, as we noted a couple of weeks ago, is now the primary owner of Legacy MC. Again, not reached 50 yet. Hendrick, by the way, not upset. He thinks things are trending in the right direction for his former driver, says he's happy with it. Over at Roush Fenway Keselowski, we got the Brad Keselowski aspect of it. He's not done racing yet even, so and he's not even 40 yet, or he's close to it.
Brad's my age. Brad's 40.
Brad is 40. Okay.
Justin Marks is 43.
Okay. Then there's Dale Jr. We talked about Dale Jr. Maybe more to come. How is, though...
Matt Cowlick is 47.
Oh, he's younger than I thought. So that all those are good signs.
Sure.
But you think of the Jack Roushes, you think of the Joe Gibbses, you think of the Rick Hendricks.
80s, 75.
You think of Gene Haas.
70, early 70s.
Okay. All of these guys at some point in time are going to have to figure out whether or not they're going to stay in some way, shape, or form, and if their team is going to stay in what form, right?
I think Jack Roush is more like now chairman emeritus.
Exactly. That'll be Brad Keselowski. As we mentioned, Rick Hendrick is going to be going to Jeff Gordon. Where does Gibbs go now that both JD and Coy are gone? Okay. That's a question that has yet to be answered publicly. I'm sure Joe has an internal thing going on, but publicly we don't know.
It will be in some shape, form, or fashion. It'll be Ty.
In all likelihood.
Ty will have the role, have an image role like Brad Keselowski. owner of the team, co-owner of the team, driver.
And then there's Richard Childress Racing. Now, the obvious thing is the grandsons, Austin and/or Ty Dillon.
Mike Dillon.
Mike Dillon, their dad, right?
Mike. That's Mike.
But with, and I only ask this question just because I find it an intriguing option. We know the relationship that Richard Childress had with Dale Jr.'s dad. I don't know as there's anything there. I'm pretty certain that it's going to the Dillons. But do you think that there's any chance at all that Dale Jr. might have an avenue into the Cup Series through RCR?
Very doubtful.
Okay. And again, and I only say that because I remember the relationship between the dad. Dale Jr. seems to have a much better relationship with Rick Hendrick and Hendrick Motorsports.
This will be a similar path that you see when they get there, not if, but when they get there.
Yeah.
As a similar path of 2311 to Gibbs.
Sure.
There will be that middle tie-in right there to where the 23, 45, and 35 are essentially cars 5, 6, and 7 of Joe Gibbs.
Sure.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And if you look at the 500, car 56 was essentially Gibbs' car number 8.
Yeah, that's true.
Call me, argue with the wall. I don't care. That was Gibbs' car number 8, essentially.
Sure. Yeah. So, again, here's the biggest question. If a charter is out there, if Junior Motorsports is going to get A, I'll just throw A. I'm not even going to say 2 or 3. But if Junior Motorsports is going to get into the Cup Series with a charter, the question becomes, where's that charter coming from?
Rick Ware. I see that chart. I could see it coming from Rick Ware.
But we're getting down to that point where those single car operations are getting much, much fewer. And sooner or later, they're all going to be snapped up.
Yeah. And
then we really have a question if somebody really wants to get in it. You're talking about all 2 and 3 and Gibbs and Hendrick being the 4-car operations that they are grandfathered in. Where do those charters come from?
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. back to the Championship Racing Network.
Yeah, we're back. Get ready for T-Box number 2 for one Matt Nicholson. Joe Gibbs Racing. They got a bit of a problem with the driver who finished 4th in the Daytona 500. NASCAR has slammed Joe Gibbs Racing and Chase Briscoe with one hefty penalty. Briscoe, as we noted, claimed the pole for the famed race, docked him 100 championship points. Joe Gibbs Racing, the same amount of owner points, and the operation has been fined $100,000, while James Small, the crew chief on the 19 car, is slated to sit out 4 races, and all of that because of a spoiler. The rear deck spoiler, specifically. NASCAR's claiming this hefty L2 penalty was levied because of a modified spoiler, and the spoiler is one of those single source parts that rules state cannot be modified in any way. Something that they say that they uncovered during the inspection process. I would presume the post-race inspection process?
Apparently it was found at the R&D center for additional tech.
Okay. The team announced that they are appealing the ruling because, quote, the issue was caused in the assembly process when the bolts, notice the S on the end, we're going to emphasize that because, again, I'm setting up Matt on the T-Box, used to attach the spoiler base to the deck lid caused the pre-drilled holes to wear due to supplied part interferences, unquote. Now, it's certainly a great defense. Will it mean anything or not? I don't know. More than one team owner has talked about how appealing your penalties are, let's just say, pointless. But they're going to do it anyway. And you read a little bit more into this, and with your Big Bertha driver, by all means, drive away.
I don't know whether to go Tiger Woods or Happy Gilmore on this drive right here. It's hard to understand. The spoiler passed all of the technical checks, with the exception of where the spoiler base bolts to the trunk lid.
Yeah.
Because said spoiler is held to the base of the trunk lid with not 5.
5 I can understand.
Not 10.
10 might be a little excessive, but I could see it.
Not 15.
That's a little much.
But 19 bolts. 19 bolts. Let me say that one more time.
You need the better part of 20 bolts to put a deck lid spoiler on?
People, my spoiler was held on to my late model with 12 rivets. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between a rivet and a bolt.
Sure.
12 rivets, 4 outside bolts. Outside bolts. Okay? Why does it take 19 bolts to hold something in?
Oh, it doesn't. Unless you're doing overkill.
When you're going through reading this breakdown of it, the area of this area of the spoiler base has holes in it that line up with threaded inserts on the underside of the deck lid that go through to attach the spoiler to the deck lid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The holes in the spoiler base are drilled specifically for the bolt sizes used, and if they were to become elongated, a spoiler could potentially be moved relative to the deck lid, which could result in less over-the-air spoiler and an improvement in speed. I've got an issue with that right there, because when the super speedway spoilers are not one piece of material, but they are 2 pieces of material, you've got a 7-inch spoiler laid over a 9-inch piece of clear lake sand, thinking, oh, that's the spoiler. That's garbage. No, it's not a 7-inch spoiler. It's a 9-inch spoiler.
True.
The naked eye can see that.
Yeah.
Stop fooling people.
No.
All right.
Not by any stretch.
The series likely spotted the elongated holes there and came to the conclusion that the parts were modified. How can you come to the conclusion that the parts were deliberately modified if the holes were elongated? Because that is why they issued the penalty, since the spoiler base is a spec part produced by Roush Advanced Composites. But there is also a potential for these holes to become elongated due to wear and tear because of how the bolt holes are arranged, how they're arranged in the pattern. That can do a big thing too, kids. And how tightly everything fits back there where the spoiler meets the tail, which is likely while JGR will want to appeal, which they are.
Yeah.
You cannot deliberately prove. I'm sorry. But you cannot deliberately prove an elongated hole, which can come from wear and tear, was deliberately done. You can't prove that, especially when you're running 200 laps around a 2.5-mile super speedway at 195 miles an hour. And guess what? Air is pushing on that spoiler. So therefore, guess what? It's moving. And if it's moving, things are shaking at the bottom. Can we get back to the golden age of the sport where common sense prevails?
Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice?
Oh, I'm saving the best one for last.
Okay.
It's coming.
Other post-Daytona penalties handed down to the 34 of Front Row Motorsports, the ride of Todd Gilliland, plus the 51 Rick Ware racing car driven by Cody Ware. Both were slapped with safety violations because of added ballast. So in other words, they added weight. Both drivers were docked 10 points each. Same loss to the team owners as well. Apparently, it really probably had more to do with not adding the weight, but where and how they added the weight. That's a presumption on my part.
Why would you penalize a car that's over?
Again, depends on how and where.
Ridiculous.
How and where you added the weight. That's all I can think of. It's been some years since Aaron's was a major sponsor in NASCAR, but after some teasing, Front Row Motorsports has officially announced that Aaron's has joined with the aforementioned number 34, driven by Todd Gilliland. They're going to be the sponsor on the car for 8 races this season, this weekend Atlanta being the first. Then they're going to move to the 38 of Zane Smith for races at Phoenix, Homestead, Miami, Bristol, the second Atlanta race, the Brickyard, Daytona when they do the regular season finale, and the championship weekend at Phoenix. Also back as a sponsor in motorsports is Arby's in a big way. They're pairing with Rick Ware Racing not only for their efforts in the Cup Series, but also in the NHRA. Arby's is going to be a primary sponsor in the number 51 of Cody Ware for a dozen races this season. It's a good-looking car. First coming this weekend at Atlanta. In addition, they're going to be on the top fuel ride of Clay Millican for 2 races, specifically the Thunder Valley Nationals at Bristol and then the U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis Raceway Park. Dragster looks pretty good, too.
For the love of humanity, Rick Ware Racing, get rid of those godforsaken gold wheels. You're killing the look of this car with gold wheels.
Yeah.
You're killing.
Yeah. There's not much we can say about that, unfortunately, because it's... Is Rick calling that his signature?
Apparently, because he ran it on both cars last year.
Yeah. I'm not big on it, but...
It's
yeah, whatever. Be you, I guess. Kubota and Trackhouse Racing have announced a multi-year extension of their partnership set to run through the 2027 season. Has the brand's signature orange and black look showing up on all 3 of the team's racers. For Chastain, it'll be on 6 races this year. Daniel Suarez will carry the look for at least 1 race this season, and then they'll be joining with SVG when SVG drops down to the Xfinity Series and takes over the Junior Motorsports number 9 when they go to Watkins Glen later this year. My wife likes this. I can't drink red wine. As a general rule, it gives me migraine headaches because of, well, how it's produced generally. But my wife loves Caymus wines. Caymus Vineyards, you might remember, kind of joined last year with Stewart Haas Racing when the winemaker was celebrating their 50th anniversary, so they had a special look at Sonoma last June. Then later in the season added 2 more races on the number 41, then driven by Ryan Preece at Homestead, Miami, and again at Vegas. This year they rejoined with now the renamed Haas Factory team on the 41, now Cole Custer behind the wheel. They have chosen to highlight their Bonanza Cabernet in 3 races, obviously one Sonoma, the other Coda, and then Vegas later on in the year. May have to look into this for my wife.
Looking at the time and seeing and knowing what's coming up.
Yeah.
Can we divert? Because I'm going to need a while on this one. I stated that the other day. I'm going to need a while on this one.
Yeah. All right. I'll tell you what we're going to do.
Because I'm about to go full atomic.
I'm going to give you what it is that's about to set Matt off. And at the very end, I'm going to light the fuse. And that fuse will run during the commercial break. And then when we come back and begin hour number 2, it will explode. How's that?
Because what we're setting up here, this is absolutely, utterly inexcusable and ridiculous.
All right. So on Cross Flags this week, when you get the chance, it's now posted. Watch it. But those of you who have been fans of this show and have heard this, the big show, and or Cross Flags for any period of time, know that one of the major things that Matt and I kind of harp on when it comes to NASCAR is their inconsistency when it comes to how race stewards call cautions. Second duel of the leading into the Daytona 500 and then the Daytona 500 itself were the two that we specifically highlighted when it came to this week's podcast. Well, there was a podcast that came out this week called Hauler Talk. It had NASCAR director Jusan Hamilton, easy for me to say, on, and he talked about the discrepancy between the two calls. Hamilton admitted, quote, "So hindsight is 20/20." And he added that he does second guess his own calls from time to time. One of those was indeed the yellow that he called before the end of the second duel race. He continued on by saying, quote, "That's the one when you look back, I would say we could do it differently. I would say that we could let them get to the start-finish line, but that's looking back now on a Tuesday, going through all of our reviews and having the luxury of time to be able to review the full situation." He talked about the placement of the safety crews. This is interesting. He noted Daytona has two primary cutouts where safety crews go from the infield out onto the track to a crash site. One is in turn 1. The next is in turn 2. They don't have ones in 3 and 4? It's funny. I seem to remember that they do.
Yeah, they do. There's one and 1 and 2, one and halfway down the back stretch, 1 and 3, and 1 and 4.
Thank you. Turns out that the crash of the Daytona 500, the crew from turn 2 was sent because, well, they all keep trying to go around in the circles that NASCAR goes in, right? So they figured that was the one that was the best one for it. Hamilton said, quote, "As soon as the wreck happens, because all the vehicles have passed by that turn 2 cutout, we were able to respond to that incident before the leaders even made it to the checkered, even though there was no caution. Moving forward, and always, our goal is to get to a green flag finish. We don't want to be the ones who are determining the race by how fast we push the caution button or the decisions that we make in race control in general." You see where this is going with Matt? Do you see where this is going with Matt? You can see this one coming, can't you? He went on to say, quote, we want that to be decided by the competitors on the ground. So any opportunity that we have to do that, we're going to take advantage of it. But, and I know this is not generally something that a fan at home is thinking about, certainly, but the function of a caution is about safety. And that is something that the race directors and the emergency services coordinators have to be aligned on. So if we see something that rises to the level that we have to immediately respond, for instance, a vehicle leaving the ground or vehicles barreling down on other vehicles that are already in a wreck at a high rate of speed, and that story may not always be told by what you're watching in the broadcast, but some of the resources that we have in the tower and the past experience in studying these races and trying to improve as an entire group. This might take a little while. Strap in. Or if you're already strapped in, I would invite you to do what Larry McReynolds always said before the beginning of a Fox Sports broadcast.
In the words
reach up and pull those belts down tight, and let's go racing, boys.
When you listen to some of Deion Sanders' podcasts, and when you hear him say the words, "Lord Jesus," get ready. It's coming.
That's next.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back. 4 tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. Hour 1 in the books. And in case you missed it, you missed a lot. But you're just in time to catch Matt, who's about ready to go off, because right before the break, we talked about a podcast where one of the NASCAR race controllers got into a conversation about why we had a caution flag at the end of the duel, but we didn't have one at the end of the Daytona 500.
He's the race director.
Yeah, it's Jusan Hamilton. He's a good guy, but man, the inconsistency is just whacked out. And we kind of gave the reasons why, and I would invite you to go back, if you're listening, especially on the flagship radio station, go back and check it out on CRN Live on YouTube and hear all of his quotes, which I'm not going to go through again. I'm just going to let Matt step up and take to it. If I had any popcorn, I would, but since I don't, I'm going to sit back and relax and enjoy a little treat while Matt goes off.
I'm going to start by saying this. Yes, Jusan is a good individual. Had chances to converse with him and talk to him at multiple racetracks.
Mm-hmm.
Good guy. Not questioning that.
Nope.
But if you have the race director questioning himself openly on a media platform, why do we have him in the tower still? Why? That is my largest question. Because when you're looking at, we've got to review the situations. Anybody with a brain cell, one brain cell that works, knows that sports in general, no matter if it's baseball, football, or motorsports, which motorsports should be at the top of that list in my opinion, but I'm just naming them off in random order, is a bang, bang sport.
Sure.
It's a bang, bang sport. All right. He lied about the placement of the safety crews, straight up. Because Daytona's safety crew placement areas are identical to Talladega. Talladega, there's one in turn 1, one in turn 2. 2A is right off the end of the backstretch. 3A is the end of the backstretch going into 3. There's one in 3, there's one in 4, and one coming off of 4. There are plenty of crews to get there. Okay? Moving forward, our goal is to always get a green flag finish. We do not want to be the ones determining a race by how fast we push the caution button. Hey, here's something that might work. Because I've literally had an official. His name is Mike Phillips. Everybody knows him as Peanut. You know who we're talking? Everybody that knows who Peanut is. I've literally asked Mike the question before. When it comes to when, and this is how it was worded, I said, when the white rag goes in the air and it's every chip on the table, I said, do you, any one of y'all legitimately think that, and this was at Talladega when I asked him this, I said, whether it's here or Daytona, do you literally and legitimately think that anybody is going to crack that little piece of metal off of the firewall when the money window's open? I won't say his exact words, but I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, heck no.
Yeah. We'll just say that first word was not heck.
No. Heck no. Quote right here. But I do know that it's not generally something that fan at home is thinking about, certainly, but the function of caution is about safety, and that is something that the race directors and emergency services coordinators have to be aligned on. Somewhere, David Hoots is sitting in his recliner laughing, going, what in the world are we doing?
Yeah.
Did we ever have this problem with David Hoots? Not that I can recall.
Mm-mm. Heck, you and I talked about it much more at length on Cross Flags.
When you have, but the last thing you said right there, with the resources we have in the tower and past experience studying these races and trying to improve as an entire group. All right, first off, you're not trying to improve because you're actually regressing.
Yeah.
You regress on your largest weekend of the year right off of the bat.
Yeah. You and I have had the chance to see this. This is something David Hoots did not have necessarily the access to. But you and I have been in more than one facility where we've been able to see what NASCAR has access to. Mm-hmm. And we've all seen these big flat screen TVs. Mm-hmm. Heck, we've got them in our homes. And I don't care whether it's 65 to 100 inches big.
And in some cases, the ones in their towers are larger than what you may have at your house.
Yeah. And they've got every camera angle available, and they can pull up whichever camera angle they want to get a closer look at it, all on this big flat screen that's hanging up on a wall. You can't sit there and tell me that they can't watch that and or do what we do, which is look out the window and go, okay, they're on the backstretch at Daytona, a full half a track away from the start-finish line. If they get into a wreck now, we're not calling a caution because they will be able to slow down in plenty of time before they get to that crash again.
But the problem with it is you don't throw the caution. We'll let them race back to the line. You want to know where the cars that finished 1-2 were approximately in line at the last, coming off of the going into turn 3? They were about 9th and 10th in line. We're gonna because what it comes down to, after you got absolutely roasted over the dual finish on Thursday, throwing the light about 200 feet from the line.
Excuse me.
That's about the same difference as throwing the caution when Ryan Blaney was about 20 feet from the line at Texas in the All-Star race that year. Same difference.
And have no idea why they did it.
I don't know why we did it. Oh, it was a flake of paint on the racetrack.
Yeah. They've got to be much more consistent than what they are.
It's coming to it's consistency is not even in the dictionary anymore for them.
No.
Because you throw it 200 feet from the line Thursday. You throw it coming off of 4 Friday in the truck race. You throw it essentially in the middle of 3 and 4 Saturday in the Xfinity race. You throw it 963 times in the ARCA race. No matter what. But you let it go in a wreck that is way further back than what the other ones were combined. But, we're going to let it go. And then once the leader crosses the line, click.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Not at all.
If you're going to throw it, throw it. If you're not going to throw it, keep your hands off of the button, handcuff your hands behind your back, and let them race to the line. Because unless it's got to be a major accident. For me to throw that caution light, when you're in a race of that magnitude, there needs to be a minimum 3 to 4 cars that have a severe, hard impact. Not just 1, 3 to 4.
And again, what we're looking for is consistency here. Okay? What we think is right is one of those things. But I'll equate this to another sport. I'll equate it to baseball. If you're the home plate umpire and you're calling balls and strikes, and obviously you have, according to the rule book, the width of home plate, and that is the beginning of your strike zone, and then you've got a height situation that you got to deal with. But if you're an umpire who is willing to call for one pitcher, a pitch that's, I'll say 6 inches off the plate, if you're willing to call that a strike for one pitcher, and you're calling it for the opposing team's pitcher, I'm good with that. You're consistent, at least. Do I agree with it? No, not necessarily. But at least you're consistent. That's what I'm looking for. If you're going to call it for one pitcher, call it for all of them.
Right.
If you're going to call it one way in one race, call it that way in every race.
Right. Here's how I'm going to button this one up right here. There's a lot of people that is within SEC basketball that questions how, and I'm going to name them off by name, how Pat Adams, Joe Lindsay, Doug Shouse,
that other guy,
Don Daly, those group of 4, they call certain teams one way, but they don't call the other teams the other way when it's clearly obvious. But to sew this one up, Unfortunately, Juiceon Hamilton is gaining a reputation of the inconsistency that is comparable to Angel Hernandez.
Ouch.
I'm sorry, but it's the truth.
Yeah. Hey, truth hurts. Fox Sports, talking about their coverage, said they're going to continue to use the double box screen when they go to commercials in all of their races when they go to a commercial break under green. During any yellow flag, including for stage breaks, the commercials are going to be full screen. This doesn't necessarily include the races that are going to be shown on Fox Sports 1. That's 10 of their 14 races. But the network did say to expect an increase in double box look on the cable channel as 2. Since the Daytona 500 was on Fox, we noted that tomorrow's Cup Series race from Atlanta is on Fox as well. That means there's only 2 other ones that are. They are COTA next weekend, and then when we get to Talladega, all their other races go to Fox Sports 1. Don't forget that any practice and all qualifying sessions for all Fox races and the 5 that they have are going to be on Amazon Prime. I would imagine some of these are going to be double boxed on Fox Sports 1, but probably not as many as on the main network.
Yeah.
But at least they're doing that. We mentioned the Donald Trump effect. And whatever one might think of the sitting president doesn't really matter. Here's the thing. The man draws viewers. Because you either like him a lot and you want to see what he's going to do, or you hate him a lot and you want to see what he's going to do or say. Fox Sports reported that the numbers for the 2025 Daytona 500, even despite the rain delays, the entire broadcast drew in 6.8 million people on average over the entirety of the coverage. That's up 13% over the 2024 race, but you got to remember that was delayed by rain to Monday. The number doesn't exclude, by the way, the 3.5 hours of rain delay, which in and of itself drew 5 million viewers. Now think about it. 3.5 hours of rain delay, during which I have to admit I didn't watch it, but I would presume they went and did like a previous race, maybe last year's Daytona 500?
They did.
Okay.
They did.
A replay of the 2024 Daytona 500 drew in 5 million people. That, in and of itself, if it wasn't for the live coverage of this year's Daytona 500, would be the most watched sporting event of last weekend. And you say, well, what were they up against?
Yeah.
Well, they were actually up against some pretty heavy-hitting stuff. They were up against the NBA All-Star Game, which drew 4.7 million. And they were also facing off, and I use that term very carefully, against the USA-Canada boxing match turned into a hockey game in the Four Nations face-off. That drew 4.4 million people. So the replay coverage drew 5 million. That's more than NBA or NHL. And then the live coverage drew 6.8 million. Again, we note here on this show, and have many, many times, the NFL and college football, they're the kings of television in the United States of America. But number 3 is the Cup Series. Plain and simple. But the thing about it is, when the green was ready to drop, that number of 6.8 average over the course of the entire race was actually at 7.9 million people that were watching. Think about what might have been able to happen if the race had gone longer than 9 laps under green.
Yeah.
Could have been pretty good.
Yeah.
One more note in the Cup Series, Hendrick Vice President Jeff Gordon is very keen on the idea of a sequel to Days of Thunder. I'm talking about this a lot lately, you know. So much so, in fact, he admitted he's actually talked to the star, Tom Cruise, about it. In the aftermath of the celebration of William Byron, Gordon was asked about the possibility of a sequel. The 4-time Cup champion himself said this, quote, "I've absolutely talked to Tom about it because I want him to do the project, and we want to be a part of it if it were to happen." Gordon and Cruise have been longtime friends. Cruise sat actually on Gordon's pit box, showed up and surprised Gordon during his retirement speech at the 2015 NASCAR awards ceremony. So, yeah, they have been longtime friends, and Gordon added this, quote, "He seems to like to tease it. We'll see what happens. If that doesn't happen, I feel pretty confident there's a project out there that will get NASCAR back on the big screen, if not a really cool docuseries or something beyond even what we're really seeing right now."
With how well Top Gun Maverick went through,
I'd be shocked if he didn't actually
I would
go
be
back
surprised. 1 and 2, this happens. This happens. Please, please, please. I'm begging somebody. Randy Quaid has got to be back in there. Tim Dalen comes back, got the long beard, old school guy, and tie in the line from Independence Day. "Hello, boys. I'm back."
Yeah, really. And in the comments about this that I've seen, a lot of people complained, hey, Tom Cruise is too old. I think even Tom Cruise would admit, if he does make a sequel to Days of Thunder, he's not coming back as the driver.
He'll be the car owner.
He'd be the car owner.
Easy.
100%. To the Xfinity Series here, and while he may no longer be full-time in NASCAR as a racer, Eric Almirola is far from being done. He reported Monday he's going to be in 9 races this coming year for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series, where he'll climb into the number 19 Xfinity Series entry with sponsorship from a group called Young Life. It's a nationwide, worldwide, actually, youth Christian ministry, very close to his heart. It was actually also a passion for the late J.D. Gibbs, who served on the ministry's board until his passing in 2019. His full schedule was not announced, but he will be on the track later today at Atlanta. The part-time Hendrick Motorsports Xfinity Series team, that number 7 is returning this year as well. They're actually going to get into about half of the 33-race Xfinity Series slate. They're slated to get into 16 of them. The first of those races is actually next weekend. Moonlighter William Byron will be behind the wheel at COTA. That'll be one of his 2 races in the 17. All the Hendrick Cup drivers are actually going to moonlight. Kyle Larson to get 2 shots in the car. Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, 1 each. So, doing the math, that covers 6 of the 16, right? Who gets the other 10? Corey Day, noted rookie. Crew chief duties are going to fall to Adam Wall. Day's 10 races are going to kick off at Martinsville on March the 29th. That'll be his Xfinity Series debut. Corey Day is a 19-year-old dirt track ace who's going to get plenty of chances to prove himself on pavement, not only in the Xfinity Series, but in other 20 or so races in other series too. Because of his youth and relative inexperience, the 17 car will not be with him at Daytona, Atlanta, or Talladega, but he will get drives at tracks like Texas, Las Vegas, Phoenix, the Charlotte Roval, and Sonoma over his 10-race schedule. What do you think about this kid?
You're going to find out real quick how good he is.
Okay. What do you think about him? Just you personally.
He's a good shoe, no doubt.
Okay.
I mean, he's good on asphalt and dirt, just like I'm not comparing him to him, but he's good on asphalt and dirt, just like Larson is.
Okay.
Just like Bell is. He's got that same capability. It's just how he utilizes that capability now that he's getting up to these levels.
That's the key.
Yep.
And one more note before we take a break here and turn our attention to the Truck Series. CW Network's first full season of the Xfinity Series coverage already paying dividends. They stated they pulled in 1.8 million viewers for last Saturday's season opener, marks the highest ratings for the Xfinity Series in almost 3 years. Last year's race, weather delayed, saw pretty bad numbers. The 1.8 million people that tuned in last Saturday, 93% over last year's race coverage, again, delayed because of weather. But it was also up markedly over the Xfinity Series championship race last November at Phoenix, which also happened to be on the CW network. It was up 62% in total viewers over the championship race last year. NASCAR said they believe that it shows that the slate of promotional commercials that they ran through the offseason help people at least locate the new series home.
I'll give CW credit. They did their graphics package and how they did everything was very, very good.
Yeah, I liked how it looked. I admit, I liked how it looked too. Truck Series news coming up next, including some interesting news about possible new makers.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. 2 tires only. And back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
More and more light being shed on what we noted last Saturday here on CRN. I'm Steve West, Matt Nicholson, along with me, producer John, producing remotely for CRN Live on YouTube. We noted that Parker Kligerman's apparent win at Daytona in the Friday a week ago season opener was disallowed because his truck was deemed too low on both sides in the rear, caused a disqualification. His team, the part-time Henderson Motorsports operation, immediately filed an appeal that was heard on Thursday. In the immediate aftermath of the DQ, Kligerman was very quiet about it. He only posted on social media this, quote, "Biggest win of my life. Thank you for all the wonderful messages, over 700 texts. I will not be commenting any further until we are able to present what I believe is a very, very valid case. Until then, I'm fully focused on my job with CW Sports and NASCAR Xfinity because the drivers and the teams deserve the full focus on the massive stage ahead of them." Well, the appeal got heard on Thursday. It fell on deaf ears. The 3-member appeals panel upheld the DQ penalty against the team. And shortly after the ruling was announced, the team released a statement that read in part, quote, "Unfortunately, we've lost our appeal regarding our disqualification from last week's race at Daytona. While we feel that we had a very strong case, we respect the panel's decision. We'd like to thank all the fans for their support. We've shown that we can compete. We'll be back. See you all in Bristol." And you kind of found out a little bit more about this,
Yeah.
But you have questions about this too.
I'm gonna go back and read.
Okay.
Parker Kligerman stated on one of his social media channels of what went down. He stated, saying, "Thank you all for the support. This has been one of the hardest weeks of my racing life. I've worked with the team 24/7 on the appeal since Saturday night. The truck raced legal and won legal due to an unforeseen circumstance in tech." Okay. Whenever that hits, I'm going to listen to this to see what that unforeseen circumstance is.
Yeah, because now you're going, wonder what that might have been.
It was measured at an improper height that made the rear low by an 1/8 of an inch on the left rear and 1/4 of an inch on the right rear.
Neither of those is an insignificant number.
On a ride height, that's huge. That's substantial.
That's huge.
So what caused that?
Yeah.
It passed the sticks, and that's what you call the sticks, but trucks still use ride height sticks. It passed the sticks, going to the grid, but it didn't pass the sticks coming off. What happened where? Was there a part failure on that truck? This is just me running a checklist here.
Sure.
Was there some type of a suspension part failure on that truck that caused the rear to drop? Did that truck take a shot on a bump draft that may have bent the body down? It's legitimate. It could happen.
Sure.
Or what he's saying, how does one get measured at an improper height? That makes me go, huh?
I don't know.
Because a 1/4 inch on a ride height is huge.
It is. I don't know if we'll hear any more of that, but it is interesting to see Parker Kligerman's take on it. 2024 championship contender Grant Enfinger going to have a very familiar sponsor again this year. His CR7 Motorsports team has re-upped with Champion Power Equipment. They've extended their deal, and they will be on the hood of the number 9 truck for 19 races this year, including today's race at Atlanta. This is the 11th straight year Champion has been a major sponsor of Grant Enfinger in the Truck Series, regardless of what team he's driven for. And to the surprise of exactly no one, Kyle Busch is slated to drive his limit of 5 Craftsman Truck Series races again this year, all for the company that bought his old Kyle Busch Motorsports organization, Spire Motorsports. First of those 5 is today in Atlanta. Not a shock. He won there last year. Charlotte, that'll be, is that All-Star Weekend? No, that's Coca-Cola 600 Weekend.
No. I lost my place here.
Trying to figure out the schedule here. Charlotte, North Wilkesboro, Nashville, and Watkins Glen. I thought we go to North Wilkesboro before we go to Charlotte.
Yeah, North Wilkesboro is the weekend before Charlotte.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Either way, he's going to drive at Charlotte. Busch said of the tracks for this season, quote, "My schedule will consist of some tracks where I've had a lot of success in the truck series, like Atlanta, Charlotte, and Nashville, but also 2 tracks that I've never raced at in a truck, North Wilkesboro and Watkins Glen. Looking forward to hopefully adding a couple of more tracks to the list of places where I've won across my Truck Series career. Busch, of course, is the winningest truck driver in Truck Series history, 66 wins and counting. How many of these races do you think he will win this year?
Ooh.
Because, again, anytime we see Kyle Busch in a Truck Series race, we pencil his name in as the winner anyway.
I legitimately could see 4.
Mm-hmm. That was the number I immediately had in my head, was 4.
I could see 4.
Interesting note here, in a combination between two competing networks. Motor Racing Network, MRN, Performance Racing Network, PRN, the two competing NASCAR radio networks who call themselves respectively the red shirts and the blue shirts, which is ironic because that's what Matt and I are wearing today, are showing much more of a willingness to work together over the last couple of years. They've even shared some personalities between the two networks. Now the two are actually combining forces, and they've created the NASCAR Racing Network, NRN, which actually started last week at Daytona. The NRN, NASCAR Racing Network, is set to cover all of the Craftsman Truck Series races this coming season, which allows PRN to join in the Trucks Fun officially. MRN really had been the network for the series radio coverage previously and exclusively even at PRN tracks.
Right.
Now PRN guys get to get into the fun, and it's about time.
I think it's been overdue.
I agree 100%. Now, we keep talking about this possibility of a fourth manufacturer coming into NASCAR, right? I will warn you right now, only one source is reporting this right now. It's Chris Knight at catchfence.com. This report did get the attention of Adam Stern at Sports Business Daily, who we tend to trust a little more, no disrespect to Chris Knight. Chris Knight hasn't necessarily steered us wrong, but Adam Stern has been right more often than he's been wrong in these situations. Chris Knight, a little closer to 50-50. Yeah. Chris Knight is reporting that Stellantis is changing course, and they are now willing and will return to NASCAR with the Ram brand returning to the Craftsman Truck Series in 2026, and the Dodge brand set to join the Xfinity and Cup Series soon after that. He's thinking 2028-ish. Now, the last year that Dodge was officially part of NASCAR was 2012. That was the year that, ironically, Brad Keselowski won the Cup Series title in a Dodge. But Ram soldiered on through the 2013 season with full factory support, and we saw Rams on the track through the 2016 season. And they did claim drivers' titles with Bobby Hamilton Sr. in 2004 and the manufacturers' titles in 2001, 2003, and 2004. But then this morning, when I got here, I got a notification, so I looked it up. And this is another one of those, only one source is reporting it at this time, and it is the group EssentiallySports.com. So take this, not with a grain of salt, but with a deer lick-sized salt lick. So, okay? I mean, huge.
I would say a 53-foot box trailer size.
So we got the Dodge Ram fire going, but Essentially Sports claims that Honda, now not having to worry about the haggling with Nissan about a merger, might actually now be ready to pull the trigger on getting into NASCAR and might actually beat Dodge/Ram to the punch in full participation, not just the Truck Series, but Xfinity and Cup. As we noted about the Dodge Ram entry, only one source is reporting it. So again, however big a thing of salt you want to take with it, please take it. We're going to wait until we get full verification before we go full on and saying, yeah, this is going to happen.
If this is about to happen with Honda, I see Dodge way more likely than Honda.
Sure, yeah. Especially with the way that the leadership has changed over there under the Dodge and Ram brands for Stellantis. Yeah, to the point where they're even navigating away and saying, hey, we were going to drop the Hemi V8, but guess what? We're going to bring it back.
You've got an opportunity to come in with a bang. Here's what I mean by that. Because on the grid today at Atlanta, there are only 32 trucks. The field size is, full field is 36.
Yeah.
Anybody got a ride? I can bring my fire suit and jump in.
And you can't tell me that if Ram isn't coming with full factory support, that there isn't going to be a team if not 2 or 3, that are going to be more than willing to jump on that.
I'm going to tell you the one I would go after in a hurry. Go after some of these smaller ones. Even though with some that left the sport a little bit prematurely.
Mm-hmm.
Go after the ones like Timmy Hill's team.
Sure.
That's a prime one.
To get full factory support, man, he'd jump all over that,
That's
wouldn't
a prime one.
He would jump on that.
Go for Young's Motorsports.
Heck yeah.
These smaller ones, elevate them up to the levels of ThorSport, Tricon, McAnally, Spire. Things like that. Elevate them up and make it more competitive.
Absolutely.
Because there's some aspects of it where the Truck Series is beginning to look a lot like ARCA.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Speaking of the ARCA Menard Series, real quick.
Great segue.
Thank you. A NASCAR Cup Series championship winning crew chief turned director of competition for one Cup Series team has landed a new job, and it is all the way down in the ARCA Menard Series. Greg Zipadelli, who led Tony Stewart to Cup Series titles in 2002 and 2005 and then followed him over to his Stewart-Haas Racing organization where he became the competition director, actually did not continue with the team when it became the Haas factory team, so he's landed himself a new job. This will be a nice get for Rhett Jones Racing. Comes in as their VP of Business Operations, where in that role he'll oversee business strategy, company initiatives, and the overall development of the team's racing operations, not only in ARCA, but in other series that they're in. They are a part-time truck and or Xfinity Series operation. They get into a few races a year. I get the funny feeling Rhett Jones Racing is looking for more. Dodge Ram, you listening? Honda, you listening? Just throwing it out there.
They're the flagship car for Ford and ARCA.
Huh? You can't sit there and tell me. I mean, it was Chevrolet that got Tony Stewart and Gene Haas together, and what did he do a few years later? He flipped to Ford. You and I both know that. You can't tell me that if Dodge or Honda came calling to Rhett Jones Racing and said, hey, we'll make you the flagship of our operation and give you full factory support instead of sharing it with all these other teams, that you wouldn't go with it. You can't.
You can't. No, you can't.
You're certainly going to listen. Even if you don't bite, you're going to listen to the offer. You almost have to. To Formula One, we're going to show you the F1 reveal of all 10 cars. They're all in one picture. Producer John's going to put it up there so you get a good look at it and how they're going to look officially for the 2025 season. That was held again Tuesday at London's O2 Arena. So if you're on CRN Live on YouTube, you'll be able to see how all 10 teams are going to look this year officially. Might get some special paint schemes from here or there, but for the most part of the 24 races, this is how they're going to look, okay? While we leave that up for a little bit until the break anyway, we'll let you know that on Wednesday, the F1 Promoter Awards were held also in London. 2024 F1 Promoter of the Year, South Florida Motorsports. The promoters, obviously, of the Miami Grand Prix. Managing partner Tom Garfinkel accepted the award, said, quote, on behalf of our team in Miami, I want to express our sincere gratitude to Formula One and Stefano Domenicali for the honor of being named Promoter of the Year. Other winners included the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix as the main spectacle or event spectacle of the year. They held concerts by Teddy Swims. I don't know who that is. Maroon 5 and Muse, along with a large and lengthy post-race end-of-season fireworks display. Fan experience of the year went to the Singapore Grand Prix. They had apparently very clear signage and innovative pathways in and around the facility and numerous entertainment stages for all of the fans. So, good for them. Mexican Grand Prix, noted as the opening and closing show of the year for their driver introductions and the local dancers and mariachi bands, giving it a local flavor after the race. And the Australian Grand Prix was cited for Community Changemaker for their social networking, which they say brought in plenty of local flavor as well. So, pretty good stuff there. John, let's keep that up there again until I take a break, and I'm going to do this one more story here. So, yeah, keep that picture up again through the story. That way they get a good look at all 10 cars. And I did find this interesting. With all the talk that we've been talking about when it comes to Dodge and or Ram coming in, could Formula One be looking to their past when it comes to the future? If FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem gets his way, yes, at least it comes to what's under the hood, or whatever you want to call that, bonnet. Pick your choose. The leader of Formula One's governing body noted that with the series set to introduce a synthetic fuel in 2026, maybe it's time to look to the next generation of power units past the one that's going to be introduced next year. New rules, in other words. They could look at returning to, say, one of the more popular engine choices, like a V10. Remember when they used to use V10? Kids, ask your grandparents. Currently, they use and will continue to use under the new rules package instituted for next year a hybrid-assisted turbocharged, V6 powertrain, something they've used since 2013. That was kind of part of the draw that pulled in the likes of Audi and Cadillac, and it kept Honda in the series well after they talked about maybe pulling out of F1 as recently as 2023 because they didn't know what was coming in the new engine regulations. Now, with the less polluting, supposedly, synthetic fuel set to come in, Ben Sulayem thinks that when it comes time for the next set of engine regulations after the one to be instituted in 2026, they need to look at returning maybe to the V10 layout that was last used some 20 years ago in F1. The last time all entries used a V10 was 2005. Ben Sulayem posted on social media this week, quote, "This week's launch in London has triggered a lot of positive discussion on the future of the sport. While we look forward to the introduction of the 2026 regulations on the chassis and power unit, we must also lead the way on future technological motorsports trends." Really? V10 is the future? Okay. We should consider a range of directions, including the roaring sound of the V10 running on sustainable fuel. Whichever direction is chosen, we must support it and support the teams and the manufacturers in ensuring cost control and R&D expenditure. As it happens, by the way, he's not the only one thinking about moving on from the current hybrid powertrain that F1 is using. Stefano Domenicali, F1 CEO, said last August, quote, "If sustainable fuel is doing the right job to be zero emission and we're taking the point of sustainability in the right way, maybe we don't need any more to be so complicated or so expensive in terms of engine/powertrain development. So we might just need to go back to engines that are much lighter and have a better sound. In other words, drop the whole hybrid thing altogether, which would then open you up to go back to a V8 or a V10.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much, considering that we're talking about a six-cylinder, that a V10 could be a significant weight savings. But because of the hybrid loss, you might actually be there.
True. It's true.
I'd kind of like to see him do a V10 again. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I'd like to see a 12.
How many would stay?
Right back with more. fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
We'll get to as much as we can here before we wrap up. Going to turn things over here on the flagship station, at least to coverage, I believe, of Cup Series qualifying.
Correct.
Williams team principal James Voles, he was the target of some criticism for letting highly thought of rookie Franco Colapinto go to drive for Alpine this coming season. Well, turns out they're not 100% true. Turns out Voles clearing the air, dispelling the rumors that Colapinto was released to drive elsewhere. Turns out Voles said that Colapinto is actually still under contract with Williams and is on loan to Alpine as one of their reserve drivers for 2025. This was a concession to Colapinto after the team chose to go with F1 veteran Carlos Sainz over him for that seat alongside Alex Albon. Colapinto said that he thinks that despite Jack Doohan being named as the driver there, that he will get plenty of seat time this season. His best chance to gain more behind-the-wheel experience as well. Said this, quote, "There's a period of time where I hope he is racing for Alpine. The reason why we did this is that I wanted him to be racing in 25 and or 26. This is the best chance," Voles said, "he has, and that's with Alpine, and that's why he's there. And I don't mean that to the detriment of Jack. I hope Jack has a successful time, but ultimately Franco's my driver. And I want him back in that car." After a period of time, could he return to Williams? That period of time is not a line set in stone where I can look you in the eye and say it, but I can say he will be back with Williams at some point in time. Jack Doohan, by the way, kind of got under his skin. Said, "I'm not planning on giving up my seat anytime soon, and I don't care who it is." And I don't blame him for saying it.
Nope.
Colapinto, as you might remember, took over for Logan Sargent, who was fired midway through the 2024 season with after 9 races in total, where he scored 5 points. However, as we noted, he was passed over for the full-time seat in favor of Carlos Sainz. Colapinto was, so both Sainz and Albon signed through 2026. So that means Colapinto is going to be a reserve driver for both Alpine and Williams, at least this year, and maybe for both of them again next year. Okay.
As if you need a reserve driver at the same time.
That's true.
Can't drop 2 cars.
We'll have to figure all that out later. Alpine's team boss, Oliver Oakes, said Doohan will get his fair chance to impress and solidify his seat, and his teammate Pierre Gasly contributed about it too. Quote, "I know Jack is a great person and a great driver. I've seen him develop, and we've given him his chance. I won't comment any further. As a rookie, it's never easy to get into F1, and there's no need to make things more complicated than they need to be." There you go. As for the aforementioned Logan Sargent, the now former Williams F1 racer has canceled all of his racing plans for 2025 and is set to take some time away from motorsports as a whole. Sargent had latched on with IDEC Sport, IDEC Sport, which was set to debut the new Genesis LMDH prototype program for the division of Hyundai, set to hit the track in 2026. And he was going to do it in conjunction with drivers like Jamie Chadwick and Mathis Gilbert. But on Tuesday of this week, the team confirmed Sargent will not be racing for them. They said only this, quote, "Following the decision of Logan Sargent to step away from the sport to pursue other interests." Okay. IDEC Sport and Genesis Magma Racing are taking note of his decision and will announce a substitute in the next few days. We wish Logan the best in his projects. Other than saying he's stepping away, Sargent hasn't commented. Okay, we'll see. Last week we told you about the sentences, such as they were, handed down to the trio of guys that were found guilty in a German court of attempted blackmail of Michael Schumacher and his family. The thing about those sentences, as we detailed them, is that they seemed pretty light. Only the ringleader, and these people have all been now identified, sort of. The ringleader, identified only as Yilmaz T, no last name officially given, was given a 3-year sentence in prison for a multi-million-dollar potential blackmail. Think about that. 3 years. The other 2 suspects, Yilmaz T's son, Daniel L., and then there's Marcus F., who's the former employee of the security firm that was hired by the Schumachers. They were given suspended sentences, now revealed to not even equal the ringleader's 3-year sentence, but only be 2 years for the 2 of them. The Schumacher family has determined that those sentences were too lenient, and they are appealing the sentences. A statement from the Schumachers reads in part, quote, "We have appealed what we consider to be far too lenient sentence on Mr. F. In my opinion, he was the mastermind behind this, and what still shocks me the most is the massive breach of trust He should receive a punishment that deters any potential copycats. Yeah, I'm sorry. A suspended sentence when you had inside and you were able to get a hold of the pictures and you were able to get a hold of videos that was going to be used by Yilmaz T in going after hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in euros. Yeah, I'm sorry. A 2-year suspended sentence doesn't seem good enough.
No, it really doesn't.
I mean, this is a country that if you're caught speeding, docks you a percentage of your actual take-home pay.
Well.
But yet they give an attempted blackmailer a 2-year suspended sentence? No. Sorry, not buying it. Speaking of court cases, the former Haas F1 team principal, Gunther Steiner, has now dropped his lawsuit against the organization that he helped bring to Formula One. Apparently, mediation resulted in a confidential agreement between the two sides. Steiner, who's now 59, sued Haas Formula LLC in April of last year for monies that he claimed he was still owed after his contract was not renewed and he was removed from the team. Amongst the things he claimed in the suit filed in North Carolina, Steiner said that any success of the team since joining 2016 was largely due to his own efforts and that the, quote, popularity of Formula One in America is rapidly growing and Haas F1 has grown with it. But neither Haas F1 nor Formula One would exist in the modern United States if not for Gunther.
Woo!
Bold, considering they came to COTA in 2012, but all right. The suit further claimed that Gene Haas was continuing to use Steiner's name and image after he was let go, and that was a monetary benefit to the organization. Mecklenburg County, North Carolina court documents showed the two sides sat down, and after more than 28 hours of talking it out, reached a mutual agreement that covered all the issues that either Steiner or Haas Formula LLC had, adding that Steiner dismissed his suit with prejudice, and what that means is he cannot refile that suit. Steiner didn't comment. A statement from Haas F1 read in part, quote, "We are pleased to announce that Gunther Steiner and Haas Formula LLC have resolved their dispute, that Gunther Steiner has withdrawn all allegations previously made in his lawsuit, and all claims asserted against Haas Formula LLC have been dismissed with prejudice. Both Mr. Steiner and Haas Formula LLC wish each other success in their future endeavors, and we will have no further comments." All right. There's got to be a can't disclose in there. Confidentiality agreement. It's got to be in there. One more note here where former F1 team owner Eddie Jordan is back into owning in sports, but not in racing. He's bought into part of a rugby team. Jordan is part of a group of investors that bought the London Irish Rugby Club. It's notable because the organization actually got kicked out of its league because it couldn't even make player payroll. Due to that, the club went into administration. We call that receivership here in the U.S. It did that in June of 2023. Jordan, the former F1 driver turned F1 team owner turned TV personality, formed a group named Jordan Associates last year, and that began to work on getting the ownership of the club, which does have a long and storied history. It actually dates back to 1898. Financial details were not disclosed, but the team wants to get back into main competition in the league, said in a statement, quote, "The Jordan Associates team will now turn its attention to negotiating a full and sustainable return of London Irish to competitive rugby, hand in hand with London Irish's supporter base." The league, not yet commented. But I would say with Eddie Jordan, it's got a pretty good chance of making it back in.
Probably so.
Ed Carpenter Racing, we showed you a few weeks ago, they unveiled their new logo for 2025. They're going away from that traditional cursive signature look to what they're calling a more modern look, featuring the ECR initials. Whatever. As the logo shifted colors from the traditional forest green to brighter colors, so have the racers. Actually, little to no green at all. The car is showing a majority of light blue with neon yellow highlights on the nose, front, and rear wings, and along the side pods leading into the rear fenders. That's for Christian Rasmussen. As for his teammate Alexander Rossi, light blue is in the same positions as Rasmussen's, but much less yellow. Black taking over the side pods on his car, rear wing, rear tire fenders. Rossi's going to pilot the number 20 full-time this season. Rasmussen will take over as the full-time driver of the team's number 21. What about Ed Carpenter? He'll probably get in one race, being the Indy 500, and after that, he's pretty much turned his attention to full team ownership. Good for him. Team Penske announced that the longtime Joseph Newgarden sponsor Hitachi Estimo is back for a 14th season as the primary sponsor of the number 2. Congratulations to them. Arrow McLaren Racing has announced 2 changes in team leadership for them. Kevin Timjohn is joining the operation as the president. He comes over from outside of the racing business. He's had leadership roles at companies like Lid Sports Group and Just Marketing International. The other's more of a promotion. They announced IndyCar racing veteran Tony Kanaan now becomes the IndyCar operations team principal. He moves up from deputy team principal.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Takes over driver development of the team's trio, Pato Award, Nolan Siegel, Christian Lundgaard. Knock it out, man. Go get it. John Force, congratulations to him. He is now in the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame. One might think you'd have to be a native of Canada, America's hat, to do that. John Force just said, hold my beer. Turns out his first of his 157 wins came in Canada. So they figured, why not go ahead and recognize that? So they put him in the National Hall of Fame. Think about this. Canadian Motorsports Hall is now just one of a number of halls that he is in. He's in the International Motorsports Hall of Fame right over here at Talladega. He's in the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in Daytona, the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame, the California Sports Hall of Fame, the National Motorsports Press Association's Hall of Fame, and the Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame. How many more halls of fame can he get into? I guess all of them. Whew. And you might not have realized this, but the John Force Racing funny car side of the operation, they're at 299 wins. They could become the first operation to claim 300 event wins in a division in NHRA history. And it won't take too long to do that with the pair that they got going. And unfortunately, some sad news. The passing of the second ever national champion in series history, Melvin Heath, born and raised in Oklahoma. On CRN.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.